Let's access our Buddha nature that our problems too may vanish. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. The question begins, seriously trying to work on my Buddha nature. So this person's intellect and enthusiasm are a thing of beauty. Let's continue forward. I'm very new to Buddhism, but this past week, I've been seriously trying, what's going on here there we go. I've been seriously trying to work on my Buddha nature. So let's explore that a bit further. What is Buddha nature? That's the wrong button. Let's try that again. There we go. Way back in the Buddha's Iron Age, there weren't too many functional magnetic resonance imaging machines, commonly known as fMRIs. Hence, people referred to the various functions of the brain, hence people referred to the various functions of the central nervous system metaphorically. Today, however, we have the gift of imaging, and we know what's going on. Let's jump ahead and explore exactly what's going on. All right. So, when it comes to mindfulness, every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we access our sympathetic nervous system ensconced within the thoracic or middle part of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us to perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. To practice mindfulness, to notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, to notice emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. Now let's turn our attention to meditation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we automatically access our parasympathetic nervous system, ensconced within the lumbar region of the lower third of our spinal cord, as well as the cervical region of the cervical region of our upper third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to support both physical relaxation as well as mental release. Good morning, Jay. To you, I send a Yoda high five. So, the true driving factors of our Buddha nature are the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems, or to be a little more fancy, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic facets of our autonomic nervous system. This is the key to the Buddha nature. It unlocks two profoundly important things. First, it grants us, not only does it pacify our anxious and aggressive amygdala, but it rouses our anterior cingulate gyrus. This thing that kind of looks like a baseball mitt. I'm not sure it's a catcher's mitt or baseball glove. So this thing that kind of looks like a catcher's mitt, but really functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy and compassion and love. Now, the greatest Dzogchen Lamas of Tibet have insisted that the highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. This is hugely important. Once upon a time, don't know if you're guessing names because I'm trying to protect reputations. Once upon a time, there was a monk who was very, very popular, and he was raised in a Buddhist culture. So this fellow learned all the affectations associated with monasticism. how to stand, how to smile, how to walk, how to sit, how to lay down in a way that looked super enlightened. Now, it didn't touch his inner heart or his mind or his rage or his fear, but it helped him to look just super awesome. The years went by, and he had many adventures, and one of them was to start teaching people how to act enlightened. This event, his teachings were predicated heavily upon the teachings of Bender and Grinder, who coined the term neurolinguistic programming. Today we call it fake it till you make it, but the idea is that if you use the body language of enlightenment, and you speak as if you're enlightened, and you make mental pictures as if you're enlightened, well, then you'll be enlightened. So the theory went. This poor man had a massive... this poor man had a massive, what's it called? Stroke. Lost his capacity to speak. Died very shortly thereafter. I lived at one of his monasteries, eager to be amongst people who I thought, who I hoped, who I desired had found a shortcut to enlightenment and who knew much more than I about Sutra and Shastra and Tantra. Very excited. But when I lived there, I found people who were experts in the superficialities, but had untouched their inner person, their inner mind, their inner heart. And amongst them, not all of them, but enough of them could be described as demons masquerading as monks. People with cluster B personality disorders, psychopaths, sociopaths, malignant narcissists, really wreaking havoc on others who didn't have the wherewithal to know how to deal with a monster and were just trying to be kind and continue the quasi-enlightened pantomime. As you can mention, I did not last very long there. But I learned what not to do. I'm so grateful that I've received teachings that reveal, that show, that demonstrate, that explain that by embracing and cooperating with the mechanisms already in place in our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, not only can we truly master mindfulness and meditation, not its appearance, but its actuality, but we actually get to unlock its authentic benefits as opposed to an analog of its benefits. Now, analog sounds fancy, but it's kind of amorphous. So let us pin it down, shall we? I am a big old vegan, which gives me license to be extra pretentious. So I'm a big old vegan, and I love some vegetables. So imagine my delight when I happened upon these things that look like tomatoes on the vine. They were perfectly spherical. I got them home, I washed them off, I sliced them up, I pop it into my mouth, and I spat it out. This thing was just the analog of a tomato. It looked like a tomato, but it did not smell like a tomato, and it did not taste like a tomato. Imagine my delight. Then I discovered the local farmer's market, and I saw tomatoes that were not uniform in color. They had different colors and different shapes, and heaven forfend imperfections on their skin, but their scent and their taste and their texture were orgasmic. So that's the difference between an analog tomato and an authentic tomato. Similarly, we can choose to be loving. We can choose to be kind, which is much better than the alternative. If I had a fake kindness or chase people with a running chainsaw, I would choose the former. Call me provincial. So yes, it's better to choose to give people the benefit of the doubt and choose to be kind and choose to move through life slowly, really concentrating on everything around us, than it is to be like the Tasmanian devil in a Bugs Bunny cartoon. However, the highest love, according to the great Tibetan masters, is spontaneous and uncontrived. One of the great pitfalls in Tibetan Buddhism and all Buddhism is this. Patriarchy, spiritual patriarchy versus spiritual matriarchy. Spiritual patriarchy is known for being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. Spiritual matriarchy is known for being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. So those of us, and I was raised to be this way, those of us marinated in spiritual patriarchy are rigid and controlling. And so for those, like the way I was raised, to be rigid and controlling, then NLP is awesome. Fake it till you make it is ideal. Slathering ourselves in the trappings of spiritual attainment seems to be the way to go. In fact, these are the people who love the idea of actively concentrating and actively analyzing. But the only way to do that neurologically is to rely upon such structures as the medial prefrontal cortex and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the overuse of which will excite our amygdala, increasing our experience of aggression and anxiety. And if we ignore the warning signs to, hey, danger, Will Robinson. If we ignore the warning signs to slow down and rethink our strategy, we just power forward like we've been taught in the gym because of bro science, then we run the very high probability of beginning to present with symptoms of depression. Therefore, the path of contrivance, the path of abusing our prefrontal cortex is not sustainable. Although we might do it with the best of intentions, it's not sustainable. And that is one of the warnings of the 81 poems of the Tao Te Ching, that although our motivation is immaculate, we can still get disastrous results. How ironic that the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system have been present all along and will give us the results we want effortlessly. So check this out. We are already inhaling and exhaling a couple times a minute if everything's going as planned. If you're not breathing, may I suggest the Beetlejuice review? So, every minute we are experiencing several inhalations and several exhalations, which means every minute we have the opportunity to cooperate. Our brain has the opportunity to cooperate with the latent mechanisms already in play. I've never gone skiing, but I was told that that when you go skiing, there's a chairlift and it's moving whether it's got passengers or not. And so you kind of coordinate your tuchas with the bench as it comes around, and then you plop yourself down, and then you're taken to the top of the mountain. Similarly, we could think of our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems as our chairlift. How are we going to coordinate our tuchas? Through words. Silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this as you inhale, and you will coordinate with your sympathetic nervous system. Silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease as you exhale, and you will coordinate. Oopsie, where's my cursor? You will coordinate with your parasympathetic nervous system. And so rather than choosing not to be a complete bastard, choosing not to be a dickhead. You can just allow the subtle mechanisms of your central nervous system to make you the Buddha you were born to be. So the first fringe benefit, in summation, the first fringe benefit of a healthy practice of mindfulness and meditation is the highest love. And when I say highest love, I don't mean in the Cheech and Chong way, although the comedic potential for that is chef's kiss. But the highest love that is spontaneous and uncontrived. Now, I'm super excited. I'm so excited my mouth is watering. And that may be because I talked about tomatoes. Maybe not. But the second fringe benefit is the key to superpowers. The Mahayana folks talk about this as expedient means. Here's how it works. The more we have a healthy practice of mindfulness and meditation, which can be begun as simply as setting aside 5 minutes every 12 hours or so, which is pretty user-friendly, especially in the day and age of using smartphone timers. Persist with this. In a week or less, you could notice your choices and your utterances and your deeds flowing in the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity. No, not contrivance, not scattered spontaneity, but centered spontaneity. That is the fruit of a healthy practice of mindfulness and meditation. So, now let's return to the series of questions addressed or written by the very good-hearted person I was referring to. Meaning, to look at people with kindness, and compassion, which I was apparently born without. I'm going to look at that as humorous self-deprecation and the what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, there's a fancy word. And a hyperbolic statement, because unless you have a cluster B personality disorder, unless you are a psychopath, a sociopath, or a malignant narcissist, you do have an anterior cingulate gyrus. But let's explore that further, shall we? Since there's been, for the last 10,000 years or so, or is it 13,000 years? 10,000 years or so, give or take a century, give or take a millennia. So for the last 10,000 years or so, we've been living in a spiritually patriarchal and commercially patriarchal society that rewards being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, and punishes people for being flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. Consequently, as was demonstrated by the studies cited in Peter Joseph's New Human Rights Movement, the more peril we are in, the more peril we are experiencing, the more our amygdala lights up as it was supposed to. It was designed to protect us. And let's face it, in late-stage capitalism, we need some protecting. Woof! Things are dodgy. So, It's not that you were born without an anterior cingulate gyrus. It's just that because of the nature of the society in which we dwell, it's been pacifying our empathy and increasing both our aggression and our anxiety. But the potential's still there. You don't have to believe in it. You can get an fMRI, or if you have good insurance, it's there. And the key to, I don't know about you, I love other people's dogs and cats. Because other people's dogs and cats don't require heartbreaking trips to the vet or the drudgery of cat litter box duty. But I get beside my point. Here's my point. Love watching other people's cats on YouTube. I think cats are so cool, and they're just too cool for school until something goes wrong. Then they just spaz out, which is also funny. Like the cat who's investigating the tantalizing aromas coming from an empty bag of Doritos, but then he can't quite back out. And so he starts trying to use centrifugal force to knock the bag off his head, but he keeps knocking his head into immovable objects. And then he invariably backs off the table while still wearing the bag of Doritos as a chapeau. Maybe that makes me a bad vegan, that I find that funny. No kitty cats were harmed in the filming of those videos, just their dignity. But anyway, how do we, like a kitty cat, stuck in a bag of Doritos, backpedal our way out? Haha, you know the answer. Mindfulness and meditation that cooperate with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system through the cunning use of respiration and monosyllabic words. That's it. How deliciously simple is that? Do you like The Matrix? I love The Matrix, especially the first Matrix. Who doesn't want to be a spiritual superhero and fly about like Neo to the strains of Rage Against the Machine? Oy vey, getting chills just thinking about it. Well, check this out. Our ultimate act of subversion in the face of capitalism, sexism, racism, classism, fascism, jingoism, and genocide occurs between our ears by sitting down in a sustainable posture at least 5 minutes every 12 hours or so. We are escaping the matrix and sowing the seeds to help others do likewise in the most sustainable way. Let's continue. And I noticed things started to change. In me. Is this possible in such a short time? Yes and yes. So yes, it's possible to see superficial changes when we embrace the analog, when we actively force ourselves to be kind, when we actively force ourselves to give the benefit of the doubt. But we supercharge those changes when we go from contrivance to centered spontaneity, when we go from prefrontal cortex to the autonomic nervous system. Before either of us was born, most likely, there was a series of advertisements terribly popular that I only learned about from Mad Magazine. Oh, how very intellectual. And it goes like this. Leave the driving to Hertz. Similarly, leave the enlightenment to your autonomic nervous system. Do not fight it. Cooperate with it. Like, like a scared kitty cat in the loving embrace of its minion, I mean human, who gingerly pulls the Dorito bag off of its frantic head. Similarly, we are liberated by cooperating with the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, in harmony with our respiration through the cunning use of words. To the individual who wrote this question, bravo, well done. You are doing good. Your enthusiasms are perfect. Your errors are even better because they are opening doors for learning opportunities for you. The Buddha promised. Whoops, let's just look for a diagram because gotta love that. In the penultimate passage of the Satipatthana Sutta, we read that one can master the Buddha's path in less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 days. 7 weeks, or even 7 days. So like a butterfly exiting its cocoon, let us shed the folly of superficial analogs and simply rejoice in cooperation, in cooperating with our autonomic nervous system. Going to check the time. Okay, I've only got about 15 minutes or so because I got to go to a medical appointment. Yippee. But I think it would be splendid if I could practice with you, even for just a little bit, after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each sect of Buddhism so that you wouldn't have to. Welcome, my friends, to meditate like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So, here we go. Once again, my eye has a mind of its own. This is quite exciting. Let's see. Here we go. Please chant with me. From now until samsara is emptied, may I long to bring about benefit and happiness for all beings as if they have each been my kind mothers. Thus from now until I reach the very heart of enlightenment, may I take refuge in the Lama who embodies the 3 jewels. And now just reciting instead of chanting. From now until samsara is emptied, may I long to bring about benefit and happiness for all beings as if they have each been my kind mothers. Thus from now until I reach the very heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in the Lama who embodies the 3 jewels. From now until samsara is emptied, may I long to bring about benefit and happiness for all beings as if they have each been my kind mothers. Thus from now until I reach the very heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in the Lama who embodies the 3 jewels. Together, I could be like the chondro, the archetype of actions kind, communication, conduct, and calmness, for I too could master bliss and letting go. So we're going to bring the 4 bases of mindfulness. Let's see here. The mental, the interpersonal, the physical, and the circumstantial into the path of the ultimate practice of love and release, where it is release that is emphasized. Please chant with me. As we relax into our exhalation, how could all perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, or imagination that we notice during our inhalation Feel is not graspable or void as a Buddha's real or imagined syllable or bija of light. So clearly we're working with similes here. So what we're going to do now is take all these words and reduce them down to 8 syllables, which we're going to divide between our inhalation and our exhalation. Now that we're somewhat comfortable with this 8-syllable phrase, we're going to recite it silently and mentally and passively during our inhalation. During our exhalation, we're going to do 2 things. First, we're going to physically relax as best we can, while second, striving to chant this 12-syllable mantra 4 times per breath. Now, if this is your first time hanging out with me, I invite you to... what's the phrase I'm going to look for? Give yourself permission to have a learning curve. Om Ahum Benzo Guru Me Maziri Hung. 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 Now let us rest the mind, just like we discussed in the opening lesson. Together. As we relax into our exhalation, how could all resounding communication that we perceive during our inhalation feel as non-graspable or void as a Buddha's real or imagined speech or mantra of light? Om Ahum Benzo Guru Me Maziri Hung. 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 Om Ahum Benzo maziri hum. Om Ahum Benzo Guru Me 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 Maziri Hum. As we relax into our exhalation, how good all sensual bodies or forms that we perceive during our inhalation feel as non-graspable or void as an archetype of enlightenment or yidam of light. Om Ahum Benzo Guru Me Maziri Hum. 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 As we relax into our exhalation, how good appearing circumstances or lots that we perceive during our inhalation feel as non-graspable or void as a Buddha's real or imagined paradise, pure land or party of light. Om Ahum Benzo Guru Me Maziri Hum. Om Ahum Benzo Guru Me Maziri Hum. Om Ahum Benzo Guru Me maziri hun. 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 So because I have to away to a medical appointment, I must close the practice. It would not be as safely fortunate as a pure land of lore represented in Buddhist paintings. May all minds of all beings lucid, yet void no be as peacefully enlightened as a Buddhist mind symbolized by a one-zerable vision. May all speech of all beings resounding, yet void no be as joyfully loving as a Buddhist speech symbolized by mantra. May all forms of all beings untrue, yet void no be as beautifully healthy as a Dharma archetype depicted in Buddhist statuary. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 6 3/4 hours, I would very much like to return to lead just a practice this afternoon. Although, because of the poopiness of a medical appointment, I will probably have to forego that. Anywho, I will do my best. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.